Hi, welcome to Innovation Root Studio. I'm your host Noopur, and today I'm really glad to have Mr. Sudipta Lahiri with us.
Thanks, Apur.
Sudipta is Head of Products and Engineering at Digite. An IIT Madras passed out, he is a 30-year IT industry veteran. He has worked with leading service providers like Wipro, HCL Technologies, and I2. Let's talk to Sudipta. Hi Sudi, welcome to our studio.
Sure.
So, Sudi, as a leader, how does one set the stage for change?
So, I think every organization needs to continuously evolve. If it doesn't involve, competition will eventually get to it. Um, the trick is, where does that change get triggered from? Where does the genesis of the change come from? From my experience, what I've seen is that most organizations that try for change from both top down as well as bottom up level, those are the ones that are able to sustain it. Uh, if change is triggered by only one level, and if it's bottom up and the top down doesn't respond, or if it is top down and the grassroots level involvement is not there, that kind of change doesn't easily sustain for a longer period of time. Now, it's fairly conceivable that what would drive a top leadership to change, right? Either the organization is in a growth mode or they're in a trouble mode. Something like that is fairly easy to conceive that leadership would be triggered to change. For an organization that is an even keel, it becomes a little more difficult. In those scenarios, it really takes a leader of phenomenal courage and resilience, what we would call as a level 5, level 6 leader in our Kanban community, to really trigger a change that will disturb status quo and set it for a stronger platform for the future. So I think if an organization is on a growth or a trouble mode, you will see change being triggered by the leadership fairly easily. If it is more on a steady state status quo mode, then triggering that change is a more difficult process. But we do see organizations regularly doing that, Toyota being a great example of that. The bottom-up part of the change is a little more difficult, because you really need to scout for some of your younger people, some of your really hands-on people to actually help you in that process. You need to sell your idea and vision to them. They need to get some ideas from their friends and peer community. They need to go to conferences and see what's happening around. So you need their support, and you need them to anchor your change improvement actions at that level through them. So I think it becomes very imperative that you set a direction from the top and then support it with a change management process that is anchored by key individuals at the grassroots level, who will then make sure that your message sustains, and over a period of time that success grows across the rest of the organization. So in my opinion, both these things need to happen together for any long sustaining change transformation process to be able to succeed.
It's been seen that when organizations try to transform, only fewer of them succeed. So, what can ensure the success?
So I think it's important to have the right definition of success, right? If the or to have the right definition of the change itself to determine whether it's successful or not. If the definition of the transformation is a journey of continuous improvement, then there isn't really a state of failure, right? You always move forward. Some steps or some experiments or some risks that you take may not work. They may set you back. You learn, you recalibrate, and then you move forward. So I think it's very important to recognize that if the definition is a journey of continuous improvement, then there isn't a state of absolute success and there isn't a state of absolute failure. Now that said, it becomes important that as an organization, when they do these experiments and if they don't fail, if there is a setback, then you have a leader and a management team that is patient with the team and with the organization that is going through this process, and they are able to give them the time to recalibrate and come back, right? You cannot view that as a failure that is completely cannot be recovered from. So I think it's very important to have the patience to know how long you are able to withstand or absorb a setback if something doesn't go the way you had planned it and the way you had thought it ought to be. Now, there's a term that we refer to called the Toyota Kata from Mike Rother's book on the Toyota Production System, and he refers to it as the improvement kata. And the improvement kata is nothing but small single experiments, single one step at a time experiment that you can then evaluate whether you have worked it in your direction, whether it has taken you towards your objective or it has not. And so it is very important to be able to identify these small single factor experiments that you can run towards this transformation process. Try it one at a time, keep evaluating the results, and then be able to say, yes, it worked or it didn't work. And hopefully, like I said, if it didn't work, you absorb the results, you take that as a learning, you recalibrate, and you plan your next experiment. So if this is your process of the change transformation initiative that you have, then there really isn't an absolute state of success and there really isn't an absolute state of failure. It just keeps going from one step to another.
Sudhi, what are the typical change management mistakes organizations do make?
Oh, I think you can keep rattling on. There's a long list of them. But let me try and put forward 2-3 things that I think are most prevalent. The first one that I would say is too fast, too soon. I think organizations have a very optimistic view about how long a transformation process is going to take them. They always tend to underestimate the organization's ability to be able to absorb the change as it goes along, and it always sets them up for more difficulties and failures and expectation mismatches because the expectation wasn't right in the first place. So I think the first one is too fast, too soon, and the ability to be able to recover from that. The second one, which I think is that I've seen many organizations dream too big for what their delivery teams and their organizations capable of doing, right? It's good to have a group dream big. It's good to set an aspirational vision ahead of you, but you also need to be cognizant about what your delivery team or what your execution team is going to be capable of, correct? If you set the vision too high, if you dream too big for what your team is capable of, you're just setting them up for failure, and that isn't fair to your team. It isn't fair to yourself, right? So I think it becomes extremely important to be able to recognize what is your team's capability, and if you need to improve or increase the team capability, you need to make some changes. You need to pull in people from outside. You need to do some small acquisitions, whatever you need to do. But if you need to really have an aspirational dream that your team is not capable of doing, you need to acquire that capability or you need to build that capability. But you just can't assume that people will learn on their own and it will happen. I think that's just being unreal. So I think that's the second one. The third one, and perhaps the most important one, is any transformation process needs to be sold to the people in the organization. You need to keep on reinforcing that message. You need to keep on reiterating that, not just the leader himself, but the leader with all his or her leadership team. You need to be able to continuously keep reinforcing the message, why you're wanting to do, what you're wanting to do, what is the stated objective, how would the organization and the people in the organization benefit from that change transformation process. I think if that message is not sold repeatedly, strongly, you risk your whole initiative failing because people are not with you through the journey, right? And therefore, then you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of effort, you spend a lot of money going through this transformation, hoping that people would respond, but clearly they have not bought into the vision or the dream that you have for this transformation process. So I think those are the top three that I would say: too soon, too fast, being out of sync with what your team's delivery capability or execution capability is, and last but not the least, perhaps the most important, is to sell the message to your own organization why you're wanting to do what you're wanting to do, what's in it for them. I think that those three would perhaps cover a lot of the success factors that I see being absent in organizations that actually don't make it successful.
Well, pressure grows more intense on organization with political, economic, technological, and social changes. How to overcome these changes?
Wow. So I don't think there's any organization today that doesn't face these changes, risks, as one might say. And it happens all the time. It's pretty much a continuous sequence of risks that just keep happening on you. I think the key to be able to respond to this is what we at least in the Lean Agile community call as business agility, which is the ability of an organization to respond to a change. So how nimble is the organization in being able to identify, scout for these risks, scout for these changes, and then being able to respond to that and being able to calibrate to that. Many organizations that I've seen that are very nimble look for these signs very early on, and they will take these small incremental steps again in order to keep responding to these changes. They will not let these risks grow up on them so that it's suddenly a do or die situation for them, right? So if it's a technology change, if there's a very disruptive technology, they will take small baby steps in making sure that they are trying out those new technologies. They will do it, in a small company on the side, or with a small team outside. They will try, or with a university, they will try all these kind of business models to make sure that they are themselves evaluating those technology disruptions that they see, and they're able to respond to it if it really happens and materializes. And the same is true for any of the business or political risks that we see, right? If it's a risk of more protectionism, global trade going the reverse way, organizations would take baby steps to make sure that they're ready for it. They would not just wait for it to be able to surprise them on one fine day and then be completely at a loss from knowing what to do. That said, the other thing which I have noticed is that truly successful organizations have a very innate ability to actually cannibalize their most successful products and services, whatever they are doing, and reinvent new ones. In the process of reinventing new ones, they are obviously completely overhauling the foundation on which the earlier product or the service was built. So the new product or service that is being built is obviously fitter for purpose from a perspective of newer technology, newer business climate, newer economic climate, newer political change, whatever be it. So the ability to be able to build newer products or services, despite having a very successful product service in the market, which is more fitter for purpose, I think that is a very key capability of these very successful organizations as they keep reinventing themselves. And those that are not able to do so, we keep seeing plenty of examples across the history where startups, small companies just come up from nowhere and they're able to just take a large organization and head on and completely push them out of business.
Sudhi, how to lead a change when the impact is unclear?
So it's kind of easy if you keep in context what we said earlier about what is change. And if change is small incremental steps of experimentation, then very clearly you will keep evaluating what comes as an outcome from it, right? So, so if you have a technology disruption, or if you want to evaluate something which is a technological risk, and you're not sure about what's going to happen, today our tools and methods let you do what's called as A/B testing, that you can roll out a change to a limited audience, to a limited set of users, evaluate the impact, and then finally assess whether that change is good for you or not. If it's a political change, you would do pretty much the same thing. You would go ahead and, let's say, if there's more protectionism, you would go ahead and start a new center in your own geography, and then try to see how your economics change. How does the organization is able to build a new business model around that political change, and then be able to decide whether you want to grow it from there or you want to abandon it. So I think the crux lies, like we said, in making sure that we keep doing small continuous experiments, one at a time, evaluating whether that is successful or not, and then being able to finally take a call very consciously, saying yes, this is worth sustaining and reinforcing it, or no, we need to abandon it. I think that's the only way you can play this. There is no way to beat around uncertainty other than to do it, but do it at a pace and at a scale that you can absorb a setback if you do get a setback. Okay, that I think is the best way to handle uncertainty.
So what would be your one advice to reject an organizational change?
So, firstly, I think the leadership should not reject an idea. If an idea is out there, you need to evaluate and do at least some level of homework to decide whether that idea is worth pursuing. The first step is don't reject an idea outright. That's point number one. If you do accept an idea, then it's a question of, again, sorry to give the same old repeated answer, but it boils down to, again, trying to figure out what are those small steps that we need to take in order to try out this idea, right? If I want to go to a market with a new product, how soon, with the smallest of the scope, can I take a prototype to the market, get some feedback, and reevaluate and recalibrate what my product needs to be. The same is true for any service that we want to build, any new marketing campaign. So I think the only point where you would know that an organization is setting up for failure is if it rejects an idea too early, too soon, right? If it doesn't do its due diligence in making sure that it has given it a best shot in trying to evaluate that idea, its feasibility of an idea, and then decide what to do with it. Too often, we tend to reject ideas based on our own experiences of the past or preconceived notions, not recognizing the fact that the world is changing too fast for anybody to keep pace with it, right? Newer people, newer technologies, newer environments. It's just happening so fast that if we try and stick to our old experiences in this rapidly changing new everything, it just makes no sense. So why would you want to do that? So I think it's important to not reject an idea, and if you do want to reject it, you make sure that you have at least done a reasonable amount of experimentation to say, yes, we tried it, this is not going anywhere, we know what is the potential outcome, we have given it a fair shot, let's drop it at this point of time. Okay.
Thank you, Suresh. Thanks for being with us. It was wonderful chatting with you. I'm sure your insights are going to help us a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nupur. Thanks for the opportunity.